20 days in, and the world is barely keeping up. What began as a surgical strike campaign has metastasized into something far larger, something the foreign policy establishment has no framework for, no playbook to contain, and no precedent to draw on. Because this isn't just a war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. This is a war that is simultaneously redrawing every alliance, every assumption, and every red line that has governed the Middle East for the last half century. And today, day 20 of Operation Epic Fury, we've got two bombshells that could quite literally change everything. You are not going to want to miss this. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. Also, if you don't have time to watch my full videos every single day, I got you covered. Head on over to Turley Clips and get your daily dose of truth and clarity in under 5 minutes. Same straight talk and analysis, just shorter. The link is in the description below. Day 20 of Operation Epic Fury, a military operation that will go down as the first in a new era of civilizational warfare, where nuclear-armed great powers, wannabe regional hegemonies, and non-state proxy networks collide not merely over territory, but over the survival of competing world orders. Operation Epic Fury is a war like no other. It's simultaneously a war against a theocratic regime, a war against its constellation of proxies from Yemen to Lebanon to Iraq, a war over the arteries of global energy, a war against China's major proxy in the region and their permanent control over the single most consequential energy choke point on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz. And what's happening right now with the Gulf states is nothing short of an announcement that the old order of managed coexistence is over. This is warfare where the battlefield is civilization itself, its infrastructure, its trade routes, its energy supply, and its governing principles. To that end, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has openly declared it is prepared to strike Iran militarily. Saudi Arabia has already been absorbing Iranian drone and missile strikes targeting its oil refineries and critical infrastructure, repeatedly activating its air defenses. And now the Saudi foreign minister has made it clear that whatever residual trust once existed between Tehran and its Arab neighbors has now been completely and totally shattered. You'll remember that China had actually brokered a rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran several months back. The two nations had severed diplomatic ties several years ago, and it's one of the key signs that China was beginning to exercise a dominant influence in the Middle Eastern region, given that they were the chief financiers of Iran, buying up to 80% of their oil. And again, we can't lose sight of this. This is the primary reason why Trump is doing this. Operation Epic Fury is achieving two ends with one strike, as it were. Trump is destroying the major power impediment to the implementation of the Abraham Accords as the civilizational infrastructure for the Middle East, combining Israeli muscle with Arab money. And he's destroying China's attempt at permanently controlling the most important energy choke point on the planet through its regional proxy, a soon-to-be nuclearized Iran. Now, of course, the significance here is enormous. If Saudi Arabia enters the war directly alongside the United States and Israel, this conflict transforms from a targeted strike campaign into a multi-front regional war, drawing in the UAE, Qatar, potentially wider coalition partners, making it the largest Middle East war in decades. But also, again, the first Abraham coalition war, where Arab states and Israel fight together. Now, make no mistake, this is a religious war, not in the medieval sense, but in a civilizationalist sense, where a Shiite theocracy is clashing with Sunni Jewish and Christian nations, rallying around a common Abrahamic identity. And as a result of that rising Abrahamic coalition, Iran has completely isolated itself from every single Gulf and Middle Eastern country. As you can see, this is a list of all the regional nations that have called on Iran to immediately end its hostilities. Qatar, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, Kuwait, Lebanon, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Turkey, and UAE. Iran is completely isolated. It's cut itself off from any diplomatic lifeline. Its indiscriminate strikes have transformed former diplomatic partners into resolute enemies demanding Iran's permanent disarmament. In fact, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the GCC nations, that's the Gulf Cooperation Council states, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, led by the UAE, are now insisting that any post-war settlement must fully neutralize Iran's nuclear program, their ballistic missile arsenal, and its network of regional proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Iraqi militias. In other words, the only acceptable outcome from this war is an Iran so defanged and so enfeebled that it can never, ever threaten the region again. In the words of one UAE official quoted by the journal, the Gulf states now openly want the United States to, quote, finish the job. Now, this is what we've been calling, somewhat coyly, the abominable snow monster strategy, right? From Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. If you remember, he was feared by everyone in the North Pole, but when he was finally defanged by Yukon Cornelius, suddenly no one feared him. His ability to terrify and intimidate collapsed, and so, as a result, the abominable snow monster became rather humble and compliant and amendable and cooperative. That's exactly what is happening to Iran, whether they like it or not. They are being defanged. Operation Epic Fury is completely crushing and obliterating their ability to project power. And when you can't project power, you are no longer feared, and therefore you can no longer intimidate. And so you might as well get along with everyone because you've lost the ability to be an effective impediment to the economic security apparatus of the region. Now, speaking of the inability to project power, Trump is now officially reconsidering the United States' relationship with NATO because of how utterly pathetic and inept, particularly Western European nations have become. This is a stunning development, and it looks like European nations just inadvertently fell right into Trump's own trap. Wait till you see this. Speaking of it, if a nuke does go off, God forbid, you know what? You better have this. If the power shuts down and there's no heat, this is going to be your lifesaver, because if you can believe it, inside this tiny little orange bag, almost by magic, is an emergency sleeping bag that reflects your heat back onto you so you stay warm even when it's freezing outside. You will not believe how warm this emergency sleeping bag is. It's so small, as you can see here, that it actually fits into your glove compartment or it can fit in your handbag, and it's meant to be life-saving. It'll keep you warm down to literally Arctic temperatures. It's absolutely amazing. It's waterproof, it's windproof, bright orange, so it can be spotted from far up in the sky. It's made up of this weird space tech fabric that stretches and reflects your heat back onto you. And it keeps you warm even when the power's off, the heat is out, or, you're trapped in a blizzard or some kind of in the middle of nowhere. So right now, they are flying off the shelf due to the civil unrest, the natural disasters, the man-made crises, and war that's happening all over the earth. If you're concerned with where things are headed, but don't know what your first step should be, this is it. The emergency sleeping bag is recommended by emergency experts around the world, used by hundreds of thousands of people, and saves countless lives every single year. Waiting does nothing. Taking action so you have this when your family needs it, that's the best step you can take today. And since these are on sale, you might as well get the best price we've ever done. Click below to see this huge sale for yourself. Here are the details. Right now, they're marked down over 59% with free shipping on multi-packs. Get your family ready today and save a bundle before the sale ends. Oh, and I almost forgot, the 10-pack ships free. So that doubles up your savings. Make sure your family has real protection when it matters most. Click on that link below right now. The NATO crisis didn't begin last week. It actually began in Trump's first term. Back in his first term, Trump referred to NATO as, quote, obsolete. And for 3 reasons. It was designed to fight a Soviet Union that no longer existed. Second, it wasn't focused on modern threats like terrorism. And third, most member states were freeloading on American defense spending while failing to meet their 2% GDP commitments. Now, of course, Trump has since then gotten it up to 5% commitment, and yet nations like Spain continue to betray that commitment. Trump's critique was always transactional. Pay your fair share and fight the right enemies, or America walks. And that was reiterated again back in February 2025 when Vice President J.D. Vance stood before NATO's assembled leadership at the Munich Security Conference, and he delivered a blunt verdict. Europe's greatest threat is not Russia or China. Europe's greatest threat is its own internal decay, censorship, open borders, the erosion of foundational values. Europe was on notice. And so when Operation Epic Fury began, and that critical choke point, the Strait of Hormuz, was threatened, Trump looked to NATO nations to help secure it while we were doing the fighting. Now, keep in mind, we don't need NATO nations to do that. We don't need that. Remember, we barely get 2% of our own oil, if that, from Hormuz. It's Europe that suffers inordinately from that interruption. European nations get upwards around 10% of their oil from Hormuz, 5 times what we get. Not to mention our Asian allies like Japan, who are disproportionately dependent on oil from Hormuz. So in other words, Trump is like, hey guys, we all got skin in this game, right? So it's in your interest to help defend the free flow of oil in the Strait while we're busy doing the fighting. And how did NATO nations respond? They refused. This is not our fight, they said. Trump's request to help defend the Strait of Hormuz, they refused. They refused to defend shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, even gas bound for their own countries. In fact, the vile British leftist propaganda rag called The Guardian, and they're only guardians of woke Marxist trash, actually claimed that NATO nations, quote, rebuffed the president. They rebuffed his request. Rebuffed. You see, the only actual rebuffing here is coming from Trump because, as far as he's concerned, that response was all the confirmation he needed. For him, as he puts it, NATO plays stupid games while America pays the bill. European nations aren't just freeloaders. They're pathetic ingrates. And maybe it's time that Europe, particularly Western Europe, with its aging, dying, octogenarian welfare degeneracy, defend itself. Defend itself on its own. Have fun with Putin on your own. We're done with you. And so given what Trump has been saying repeatedly about NATO's obsolescence, it looks like this request to help out in the Gulf was indeed in many ways a trap. If they help out, great, no problem. But if not, they only end up proving Trump's point. NATO nations have become nothing but the very definition of parasites. Parasitic welfare queens. They live off the productivity of American enterprise with no sense of obligation to the hand that feeds them. And now it's time for them to learn the hard way just how easy they've had it over these last several decades. So we'll certainly be keeping a very close eye on how things develop, but there is no question, both in the Middle East and even in Europe, The pieces on the geopolitical chessboard are moving rapidly, and it looks like a decisive checkmate in more ways than one is just a few moves away. So what do you guys think? Is it time to disband NATO? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section below. And as always, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button for breaking news and analysis you're not going to get anywhere else. Love you guys. God bless. Hey, before you go, gang, do not miss out. Every Friday, my weekly wrap-up gives you everything you missed during the week. Live streams, top videos, podcasts, events, and the week's biggest Patriot wins. Sign up free at turley.pub/recap and start ending your week with faith, family, and freedom.